I work at a haunted Amazon warehouse. Our strange rules might just be cursed. I never should have opened that door. The chill that washed over me was more than just the cold draft sweeping through the dimly lit aisle. It was the kind of dread that sinks into your bones, thick and suffocating. I had been just another cog in the machine, pushing carts, scanning items, doing my job. There were strange rules, sure, like how the lights flickered and buzzed, but that was normal for old buildings, right? But now, something felt different. The warehouse was a sprawling labyrinth, its shadows stretching like fingers across the cold concrete floor. My breath hung in the air, coming out in puffs. The murmur of the machines whispered secrets, and I could swear I heard distant laughter echoes of things that should not have been there. Nighttime was always eerily quiet, but this was worse. This was a different kind of silence, the kind that presses in, heavy and unnerving. I pushed a cart near the back, the overhead lights flickering sporadically. A dull thud reverberated, making my heart race. Was that the sound of something falling? I glanced around, but I was alone, or so I thought. I felt eyes on me, cold and watching. The shadows danced, forming shapes that teased my imagination. The air was thick with the smell of dust and something acrid, like burnt rubber. It made my stomach twist. I shivered, the kind of shiver that goes beyond a chill, a primal fear clawing at my insides. Movement caught my eye, a flicker, a shadow darting behind the shelves. My pulse quickened. Then, the whispers came. They were soft at first, a gentle rustle of voices brushing against my ears, unintelligible yet unsettling. I strained to listen, heart pounding as the shadows seemed to shift around me. Something unseen was moving, and I was becoming acutely aware of how utterly alone I felt. I clutched the cart tighter, grounding myself against the overwhelming dread. Suddenly, a crash echoed through the warehouse, loud and visceral, making me jump. I looked back, breath trembling. Boxes had toppled over in aisle 3. Panic surged. I was drawn to it, each step heavier than the last. What could have caused it? My mind raced with possibilities. As I approached, the air became thicker. A knot formed in my throat. My feet felt glued to the floor. I peered into the darkness of aisle 3, the shadows inviting yet treacherous. I didn't want to look, but I had to. Just a quick glance. And in that moment, a figure loomed at the end of the aisle. Tall, dark, and wavering. My heart stopped. I wanted to scream, to run. But everything felt frozen, heavy, as if I was stuck in place. The figure shifted, more defined, as if stepping away from the edge of darkness. It was there, and I was frozen. The throbbing silence was loud, unbearable, just before everything fell away. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure appeared to dissolve into the shadows, but I could feel its presence lingering in the air, a weight that pressed against my chest. My breath came in short gasps, forcing me to focus on reality, the reality of the warehouse with its stark shelves and flickering lights. I needed to move, to escape. Yet every instinct screamed at me to turn away, to flee into the familiar hum of the machinery. But curiosity, the insatiable desire to uncover the truth, rooted me in place. Hello? My voice shattered the oppressive silence like glass, but there was no answer, only the faint echo of my call thrumming in the vastness. I took a cautious step forward, drawn to the debris that lay spread across the cold ground. Boxes lay haphazardly, their contents spilled, a jumble of electronics that glimmered ominously in the dim light. But beyond that, nestled amidst the chaos, something drew my gaze. A small, antique mirror, its surface clouded but reflective. I had never seen anything like it in the warehouse. Carefully, I crouched down, fingers trembling as they reached out. The moment I touched it, a jolt surged through me, an electric shock that breathed life into the dormant whispers of the past. The warehouse seemed to pulse as if responding to my touch, and suddenly the whispers became clearer, morphing into frantic pleas that echoed in the recesses of my mind. help us, trapped. The air shifted, thickening like fog around me, as if the warehouse itself breathed life into forgotten souls. I wanted to retreat, to drop the mirror and flee to safety, but curiosity anchored me. My reflection flickered back at me, and for a split second, I glimpsed more than just my panic-stricken face. Behind me, within the glass, I saw shadows weaving together, forming shapes that should not exist. A sudden, harsh clang echoed from somewhere deep within the warehouse, shattering my focus. It came again, a rhythmic clang that felt like a heartbeat, loud, insistent. It seemed to beckon me, pulling me towards the unknown depths of the aisles. Panic flooded through me, igniting my instincts to escape, but that pull was insatiable. Something crucial lay beyond, waiting for me. With the mirror still clutched in my hand, I stumbled toward the sound, my breath hitching. The aisles twisted in a nonsensical fashion, an uncanny maze that betrayed my sense of direction. The clangs intensified, reverberating through the concrete jungle of boxes and equipment. I followed, lost and terrified, certain I should turn back, yet drawn to the very thing that made my skin crawl. The search for answers. As I rounded a corner, I saw a flicker of light ahead, a sliver of golden hue piercing through the darkness. Reluctantly, I approached, my heart thundering in my chest. The light pulsed, alive, whispering secrets I felt in my bones. I stepped closer, driven by an unexplainable force. Then, the clang stopped. A stillness enveloped me, so thick I could hardly breathe. In that silence, I felt Ida's presence behind me, something large, unyielding, and aware. It filled the space, a tangible dread that sent bile rising in my throat. I turned slowly, but by then it was too late. A chilling breath ghosted over my neck, and an image sliced through the darkness. The figure, more defined now, its eyes glowing like hellfire, staring straight through me. My heart dropped, a visceral panic gripping me. I stumbled back, the mirror slipping from my fingers, shattering into countless shards that glinted menacingly on the concrete floor. But it wasn't the breaking glass that caught my attention. It was the reflection of the figure reassembled in each shard, multiplying its presence, drawing closer and closer. I turned to run, heart racing. But the warehouse itself had shifted, the aisles twisted into unrecognizable forms as if mocking my efforts to escape. Desperation clawed at me as I raced, seeking any exit. But the walls closed in, shadows swirling like smoke. And the whispers returned, louder, cacophonous, enveloping me in a haunting chorus of tortured souls as the figure loomed larger, its laughter echoing in my ears just before darkness blanketed everything. That I was not alone anymore. The darkness felt thick, like a suffocating blanket closing in on me. I stood frozen, my pulse a wild drumbeat, as I tried to parse out what had just happened. Had I truly seen that figure? Was the shattering of the mirror a final warning? The remnants of the glass lay scattered around me, each shard glinting with the distorted reflection of the ghostly eyes that had pierced through the gloom, watching, waiting. Help us, the whispers pressed into my mind, the pleas intertwining in an unsettling melody that gnawed at my insides. They tugged at my conscience, pulling me toward the wreckage of the mirror like it was a beacon of truth. But I felt it an invisible tether keeping me anchored in this nightmare. I forced myself to move, to find a way out of this oppressive familiarity, yet every pathway twisted further into the uncharted void. The walls around me shimmered like heat haze, warping as I ran. With each step, an icy breeze swept through the warehouse, murmuring incoherent secrets that sent prickling chills down my spine. My breath echoed back at me, a taunting reminder of my solitude, yet I could feel something lurking, peeking from the corners of my vision. Shadows darted, flickering just out of sight, pricking at the edges of my sanity. That I stumbled down one aisle, then another, until I stopped short, my heart slamming against my ribs. Before me stood a long row of boxes, stacked floor to ceiling, but the air felt raw, thick, and oppressive. From behind them came a soft tapping, almost rhythmic, like nails drumming against wood, beckoning. Help us! I stepped closer, trying to peer behind the boxes when a wave of revulsion swept over me. There were shapes pressed against the cardboard, grotesque and distorted, faces twisted in silent screams, mouths wide, yet producing no sound. Horror paralyzed me, the weight of their desperation heavy and penetrating. I stumbled backward, nearly colliding with a stray stack of crates that tumbled down with a thunderous crash. In that moment of chaos, silence enveloped me again, a crushing quiet that deepened the sense of dread. Just as I began to catch my breath, the tapping escalated, now accompanied by a low growl that reverberated through the very concrete. It was coming from everywhere and nowhere, a primal sound that rattled my bones that I turned to flee, marshaling my fears into adrenaline. But the warehouse shifted again. The aisles rearranged themselves like a living labyrinth, and I was disoriented, lost in circles I thought I recognized. It was the laughter, the taunting echoes of something that thrived on my fear. Then I saw it again. The figure flashed in my peripheral vision, its outline growing sharper, defined by the vestiges of light available in the murky space. It was slithering through the shadows, a predatory gaze locking onto me. I felt a surge of icy terror when it vanished behind a wall, only to reappear among the shifting crates, multiplying with each blink, each desperate breath I took. I felt a shift beneath my feet, the ground trembling ominously like it was awakening. The pale, sickly glow intensified, and I braced myself against the coldness creeping up my spine like hands grasping at my very soul. Panic flooded through me as I screamed, the sound bouncing off the walls, an echo of my sheer horror. I bolted towards what I hoped was a door, a way out of this hellish prison. I could feel its presence right behind me, almost touching, a breath away from my vulnerability. The growl morphed into frantic whispers, a shattering cacophony, urging me forward, begging me to continue. Just as my fingers brushed the door handle, I heard Ida's sickening crack that reverberated through the air, the loudest sound yet. I turned to look behind me, heart pounding so hard I feared it might burst free. And there I saw it plainly, the wrathful figure, undulating and shifting, its mouth a gaping void, filled with darkness. "Join us," it hissed, its voice a guttural snarl that filled me with a dread I couldn't comprehend. Before I could process what I was seeing, the earth shook violently, and the shelves began to buckle, falling inward like a collapsing wave. I turned back to the door, but time was unforgiving. The shadows surged forward, closing the distance with impossible speed, and I screamed as the world around me fractured into chaos. I didn't just sense it. I felt its influence spreading through me, a horrific invitation I couldn't refuse. I slammed my body against the door, but it wouldn't budge. As the shadows licked at my heels, I knew with every fiber that whatever had been unleashed in this warehouse had no intention of letting me go. The last thing I remember as darkness overwhelmed me was that damned whisper returning, clearer than ever. "You are one of us now." And then, silence. The silence fractured abruptly, splintering my consciousness like glass melting under heat. In the void that followed, I didn't feel lost so much as unmoored, adrift among shadows shrouded in darkness. The oppressive weight of silence sat heavily against my chest. I couldn't tell how long I had been unconscious. The sudden, sharp pain radiated through my head, and I gasped, rolling onto my side. The warehouse was transformed, its dimness illuminated by an eerie glow emanating from an unseen source. Awash in a sickly light, the floor beneath me felt cool as though it had absorbed the chill of death itself. I pulled myself upright, wiping the remnants of unconsciousness from my eyes, and immediately, I regretted it. The walls twisted grotesquely, the jagged edges contorting into faces, each grimace holding stories of sorrow, despair, and unrelenting hatred. Shadows writhed on the periphery like strands of smoke, whispering taunts that scraped against my sanity. "Stay, we need more," the voices echoed in my mind, layered and overlapping, a collective dirge beckoning me deeper into their realm. My pulse raced as I ventured into the distorted landscape, unwillingly drawn toward the glowing heart of this nightmare. A low hum began to vibrate through the ground, reverberating in time with my heartbeat. The floor ahead rippled as if it were alive, a breathing, pulsating entity. My stomach turned as I realized it wasn't just the floor, the entire warehouse was a monstrous being, undulating with grotesque life. I stumbled back, panic clawing at my throat, realizing I was somehow inside it, encased within its pulsating flesh that I had to escape. Somehow I turned to face the way I thought I had come, only for the exit to dissolve before my eyes. replaced by passageways that snaked into the heart of the warehouse like whispers curling into corners. Desperation fueled my movements as I darted down a corridor filled with stacked crates. Time now felt fluid and uncertain. Every move I made didn't bring me closer to salvation, but deeper into the clutches of horror. Then I caught a flicker of movement, swirling shadows coalescing into a shape reminiscent of the figure from before. My breath caught in my throat, but instinct compelled me forward. I approached cautiously, entranced by the way the shadows danced, twisting into grotesque forms that beckoned me to walk among them. "Help, join us," the soft pleading coalesced into a howl as I inched closer. Panic surged anew as the shape morphed, revealing faces of those who had come before me. Hollowed eyes like dark pools peered through the shadow shapes, hands reaching out in vain. The echoes of countless souls, trapped like echoes in a tunnel. "Please help us," they implored, their voices layered in desperation and longing, binding me to this cursed place. Suddenly, the glow intensified, and I was engulfed in warmth, the heat draining the last vestiges of clarity from my mind. I shook my head, desperate to dispel the enchantment, yet the intensity grew, wrapping its tendrils around my very essence, drawing me in like a moth to a flame. "Welcome home," my heart thundered. Home? Was this truly where I was meant to belong? An odd sensation swelled within me, an unsettling comfort that nestled itself alongside the fear it felt so familiar. Just then, I noticed an oppressive heartbeat syncing with my own, a rhythm that matched the hum of the warehouse. The shadows surged, coalescing into a churning mass of despair, pressing upon me with crippling separation anxiety. I stumbled backward, breaking free from their pull, and in that instant, the glow flickered, and the warehouse quaked, responding to my feared eye in a moment of clarity. I turned and ran, bolting down what felt like an endless series of convoluted hallways, the whispers rising into a frenzy behind me. My chest heaved with exertion, but only increased the hunger for despair that seeped from the walls around me. Just as I thought I'd found a way out, a box careened toward me, crashing down with unearthly strength, blocking my path. Desperation took shape as I swung my body to the left, colliding with a cold, damp wall that contracted beneath my weight. I plastered myself against it, gasping as shadows enveloped me, swirling, whispering in a maddening chant that I pressed my palms flat against the cool surface, willing it to obey, and stopped breathing as a face pressed through a horrific visage staring straight into my soul, mouth twisted in agony, yet smiling in a way that sent a chill coursing through me. "Stay with us, you belong," a heartbeat thudded louder, reverberating against my skin. The entity within the walls pulsed, enveloping me as I fought to resist, yet my body reacted against my will, a pawn in a game I refused to acknowledge. And then, an insurmountable darkness swallowed the light entirely. I felt something grab my ankle from beneath the floor, cold and unyielding, pulling me down, deeper into the brimming abyss. My scream came in a sharp exhalation, echoing as I was yanked under, devoured by the darkness as the laughter rose, moving as a tide. As I was pulled into the depths, I heard their pleas once more, mingled with the echoes of past horrors. "You will not escape. We are one, forever." And with that, a new whisper unfurled, one that sent a shiver through my very being. Another vessel for our child. The shadows surged, endless and engulfing, as the final tendrils of consciousness flickered and died, leaving behind only my empty scream. The moment the darkness fell away, I fell too, plummeting through an eternally cold void. I couldn't discern the shapes around me. Only beyond them twinkled tiny, distant lights, like stars trapped in a monstrous storm. I twisted in the air, unable to grasp the concept of gravity. There was none. There was only fear, an unrelenting pressure that pressed upon my body like 1,000 hands, each pulling me in a different direction. Suddenly, I landed not softly, but with a thud against a floor that felt entirely too much like flesh. I struggled to stand, every muscle tense, while the light returned, vivid and blinding. But it wasn't the sterile glow of the warehouse from before. This was something more lurid, an oily sheen that reflected a world of sepulchral beauty. The shimmering glow flickered up the damp walls like fireflies trapped in a net, casting elongated shadows that danced in panic, only to be devoured by the oppressive darkness that loomed above. Ahead of me sprawled what could only be described as a mirror of the warehouse, yet grotesquely transformed. The crates now resembled human forms, their facades crawling with writhing tendrils, while grotesque faces, twisted and pained, emerged from within, mouths soundlessly screaming in silent agony. The unbearable weight of loss pressed down upon me, thickening the air and coiling around my throat. "Leave this place," a whisper echoed, calm yet commanding. My heart raced, yet an inexplicable urge compelled me to move deeper into this monstrous imitation of reality. "No one escapes the warden," I turned, desperation clawing at my throat as I looked for a way back. But the walls had warped into a maze, shifting and reshaping with every ounce of fear I emitted. A low growl vibrated beneath the floor, nodding to a presence that lurked just beyond sight. The word warden played over and over in my Minda name that invoked a terror I couldn't quite place, swirling in sync with the shadows around me, promising destruction. Then, I spotted Ida flicker of movement near the far wall, a shadow that stood apart from the seething mass. Its form elongated unnaturally, pacing silently, blacker than the void itself. There was something eerily human about its posture, yet it evoked an instinctive dread deep within me. "Please help," I called out, the desperate plea disintegrating as it slipped from my lips. The figure paused, turning slowly, revealing eyes that glowed like molten gold. I felt drawn to those eyes, numbness creeping into my limbs as they pulsated with a sickly warmth. "Help," it whispered, a voice like thorns scraping against flesh. "The warden needs a plaything vessel to carry their legacy, as if to punctuate this sinister intent. A vibration coursed through the very walls of this abhorrent place, straining against the fabric of reality. My own heartbeat felt small, fragile, fighting to keep pace with the monstrous rhythm that echoed around me. "Join us," it sang, the essence warping in tandem with its words, twisting into malicious smiles of the damned. "Together, we reign, and despair flows like a river." The air thickened as the shadows surged toward me like a tsunami, the tortured faces now a barrage of screams, each one urging me to succumb to, become one with their twisted reality. Panic erupted, igniting the base of my spine. I stumbled back, desperate to flee, but the mass of shadows closed in with insatiable hunger, snarling and tugging at my limbs that in that moment, clarity pierced through the chaos. The misbegotten souls were trapped, children of a horror I could not comprehend, but they bore eyewitness accounts I would never fathom. I grasped that their pain was part of a larger design, woven into the very fabric of this nightmarish reality. "Not again," I shouted, an instinctive defiance spurring me to fight against their pull. I broke free for a moment, racing toward the far wall where the chilling figure still loomed like an ancient sentinel. Before I could get there, an unseen force slammed me to the ground, pinning me in a web of clawed tendrils, their coldness seeping into my bones. I screamed, desperation igniting a surge of adrenaline, tearing at the encroaching darkness. And then, I saw Ida vision that transcended my fear, something I couldn't unsee. A child's laughter echoed through the cacophony, mingling with the agonia haunting reminder of innocence lost. The shadows recoiled, momentarily faltering, their grasp loosening slightly in the face of that inner light. "The warden cannot have you," yet a voice echoed, the words dripping with regret and foreboding. In that instant of weakness, I rolled free just in time to glance back at the figure, whose eyes screamed unholy anger and possessive rage. "Flee!" It roared, but just as I turned to run, an icy breath grazed my neck. Another vessel for our child, and then came the deafening howl the warden stirred, rising from the depths of the shadows, the air crackling with rage as it surged toward me, the shadows congealing like a whirlpool, pulling me back into the maw of despair. The ground beneath me trembled, and all light was extinguished, leaving behind a single screaming face pushing through the murkone that was all too familiar. I hadn't just entered this nightmare. I was meant to be part of it, just another lost soul in its eternal torment. I was the warden's next plaything. The darkness enveloped me completely, swallowing every remnant of light, as I felt my heart thunder in my chest. My breath quickened, Each gasp mingled with the rancid chill that threatened to freeze my very soul. Whatever grasp I had on reality slipped away, pulled undercurrents that whispered secrets of despair. Through the inky blackness, I could sense the walls thrumming with life, almost as if they were mocking me. I staggered onward, forcing my feet to move despite the weight of dread crushing my spirit. My fingertips brushed against the damp surface of the walls, slick and sinewy beneath my touch. It felt alive, pulsing rhythmically, echoing the maelstrom of panic within me. "Get out!" the haunting whisper echoed again, a familiar voice wrapping around my thoughts, amplifying the terror woven into every syllable. It came from everywhere, and yet no wary specter bleeding through the very fabric of this forsaken place. "You're not meant to be here." That I hesitated briefly, staring into the enveloping darkness, where whispers of lost souls clawed at the edges of my mind. Was it truly a plea for aid, or merely a lure designed to drape me further into the chaos? Goosebumps prickled my skin as the shadows twisted, shaping themselves into deeper forms of anguish. The pain was tangible, and I could feel echoes of lost memories seeping through the sprightly laughter of children on long-ago days, intertwined with cries of desolation. "Help us!" they begged, a chorus of souls tangled in despair, each wail tugging insistently at my heartstrings. The cacophony threatened to overwhelm me, filling every gap of my consciousness with their sorrowed as if drawn by some invisible thread. I pressed ahead, guided not by choice but necessity. I needed to wake from this nightmare. Just a step away, something glimmered faintly in the abyss, a shattered mirror, its reflective shards scattered across the ground like fragments of an unraveling dream. That I knelt to gather the pieces, each shard sharp as a knife and icy to the touch. It felt like holding a part of my very essence, a reflection of my fears, hopes, and most disgraceful thoughts laid bare. One by one, I clenched the shards tightly. They might aid in protecting me from whatever lay ahead. Each jagged edge caught the dim light that flickered sporadically, revealing the grotesque tangle of tendrils creeping ever closer to me. But as I stood, a realization washed over me, sharper than any fragment I held. I recognized one of the faces trapped within the twisted embrace of the Shadowsa child, desperately reaching out with fingers stretched towards me. "Please," the apparition whispered, its eyes glimmering with an innocence forever tainted. "Save us!" An anguished sob erupted from my throat. I could hardly breathe. How could I possibly save anyone when darkness sought to entwine me in its gnarled arms? But as I looked deeper into those pleading eyes, light flickered within, a spark of hope amid despair. Spurred by adrenaline, I bolted forward, carving a path through the nightmare. But liberation was momentary. The shadows rose violently against me, licking at my heels, their icy tendrils grasping for my limbs. Panic surged, and I felt the clammy fingers of the warden tugging at my thoughts, insidious whispers spilling from unfathomable depths. "Join us," they hissed, voices united, wrapping around my mind like a vice. "Become one with us. Embrace eternity." That I fought against the flooding wave of despair, clutching the shards tightly, focusing on the warm glow of the child's eyes. "Not today," I screamed, thrusting the mirror shards outward, as if they could serve as a barrier against the malignant force. But as they glimmered, they caught in the darkness, reflected with ferocity, creating a cascade of grotesque images. Visions of torment danced in the darkness, flashes of all those who had come before me, souls woven helplessly into the very walls of this forsaken warehouse. I caught a glimpse of their faces, begging for release while tethered to an agony that refused to dissipate. And before I could process the gravity of what I had unleashed, the air trembled violently, wailing as all sound culminated into a single resounding scream. The warden's rage ignited, blinding terror consuming every corner, leaving no place in which to hide. The child's face twisted away, its visage warping and screaming as it was engulfed in the malevolent shadows. "Help!" it cried, a quivering echo being swallowed whole. An instant later, I felt something seize my throat, lifting me off the ground, binding my limbs as my vision blinked between light and dark. "Your time is up, vessel." The silhouette of the warden loomed closer, monstrous in its stride, breath cold and suffocating. "You will become part of my collection." Just as despair clawed at me, The shards of the mirror exploded into a cascade of dazzling light, breaking apart the darkness. For one fleeting moment, the grip around my neck released, and my heart surged with an echo of fear. But in that dim glow, something else emerged. A figure twisted in the vortex of shadows, a mockery of my own reflection, and it reached for me wildly, its face pressing against the barrier as it let out a chilling laugh that echoed in my Ursa familiar sound, laced with malevolent joy that I blinked once, twice, unable to comprehend the horror. Clawed hands reached from the dark, grappling and pulling at my frame, and the world around me dissolved into chaos. "Embrace your fate, twin," the thing howled, its features contorting, merging with the wretched echoes of the warden's laughter. "Together, we shall reign." And in that moment of darkest despair, I felt the floor beneath me crack, the veneer of reality shimmer and shatter, as the child's voice echoed one last time lost, alone, another prisoner in the warden's cruel game. The shimmering light extinguished, leaving nothing but shadows, and as they closed in around me, a sharp realization gripped my heart that I was not the vessel. I was merely the bait. The air thickened further, a smothering shroud that dulled the edges of my senses. I was torn from the agony of that realization, the last remnants of hope whispering into silence. Shadows twisted back together, sealing off any remnants of light, crafting a dome of perpetual darkness above me. The mere thought of my own twin laughing, a sadistic sampler of the very fabric of despair, sent a jolt of paranoia racing up my spine that I staggered back, but not one step ahead, succumbing to the oppressive grip of horror that held me in place. Tendrils slithered over my skin, serpentine creatures of palpable fear, drawing forth the worst of my thoughts like a poison-rich nectar. My heart raced as memory itself seemed to shift, the warehouse morphing around me. Hallways branched out, trapping me in a labyrinth woven of pain and whispers. The children's pleas echoed through the passages, reverberating against the walls, urging me forward, yet entangling me deeper into the warden's grasp. "Release us," their ethereal voices melded with my anguish, creating a haunting lullaby that beckoned with irresistible charm. Each note wrapped around my limbs, as tangible as real chains, threatening to pull me into their eternal sorrow. With every breath I managed to take, the electric pulse of dread surged anew, a heartbeat palpably resonating with the darkness. Another whisper hung heavy in the air, sinister and sultry, curling around my consciousness. It was a voice I recognized. "Why did you leave me?" it murmured, saturated with betrayal, steeped in pain. I spun around incapacitated, searching, desperate to find the source. Shadows danced, coalescing into forms I would rather not confront. Faces emerged, figures half real, half nightmarish, each one adorned with the wounds of despair, sorrow staining their hollow gazes. The warden's hunger had transformed my sanctuary into their hunting ground. I felt the walls vibrating with anticipation, the very foundation of this place alive with malevolence, eagerly consuming the anguish of anyone who dared tread here. Remnants of my past swallowed me whole as I drifted, weightless, through the hallways of memories. Faces flashed before my eyes, friends, family, echoes of loved ones long lost, all standing in silent judgment as tears streamed down their cheeks. "Why did you leave us?" they asked, over and over until the words spiraled into screams, a tempest of grief crashing against me. More voices joined them, rising like a tide of agony. Before I realized it, the corpses of forgotten abandoned surrounded me, grasping with skeletal hands, a level of torment I had buried deep within myself summoning forth that in their desperation, I could sense the warden's presence lurking just beyond the veil of shadows. Its breath, fetid and stagnant, wafted across my skin, each exhale whispering promises of eternal suffering as the very air drew heavy with despair. "You cannot escape," it crooned, the tantalizing sound sending shivers through me. "You are one of us now." Eyes wide, I felt the weight of their sorrow, helplessness clawing at the edges of my sanity. The child's voice had transformed, merging with the others in a cacophony. Their cries turned to twisted laughter as darkness swirled around me, viciously erotic, a call to surrender. For a heartbeat, the shadows thinned, unfurling a glimpse of harsh light spilling warmth that mingled with beseeching whispers. coaxing me away from despair. I clutched the shards of the mirror still in my hands, the cool glass radiating a flicker of urgency, and with a breath fueled by desperate resolve, I hurled them into the dark. "Let them go," I screamed, the words spilling hot and thick as the shards of reflection spiraled outward, illuminating grotesque figures that disintegrated upon contact with the shards, revealing sorrowful faces pushed into eternal twilight. Their lament morphed into shrieks, a tragic symphony echoing as they scattered into the abyss, bound no longer by the warden's spell, but the release was temporary. The darkness surged, frantic, like a wounded creature recoiling from the lamplight. With every moment, the tendrils grew thicker, pooling like ink in the corners of my mind. No matter how hard I fought, I could feel the darkness wrapping around me, squeezing tighter, seeking the pulse of my fear. "Your efforts are in vain." The warden's voice slithered near, curling around my thoughts like smoke. The laughter of my twin morphed into a singular echo, mocking me as I spun in place, ever more disoriented in this nightmare of their creation. Suddenly, an explosion of icy air shattered the fabric of the silence. The ground beneath me trembled, fissures opening in a chaotic ballet, consuming everything in its insatiable hunger. I felt the temperature drop, a malevolent force thrumming in the ground, drawing nearer, rising up from the deepest reaches. In that moment of terror, I caught sight of a Duran entrance that gleamed with an ethereal light, standing in stark contrast against the blackness. The whispers had quieted, replaced by a sudden, eerie stillness that flooded me with dread. What lay beyond it? The fragments of the mirror trembled in my grip, shimmering ominously. If I was a vessel now, and the warden's game was my fate, then that door could be my choice or the last chance for escape. But as I took a trembling step towards the light, a bone-chilling scream erupted from the mouth of the abyss, a desperate plea clawing its way back into my consciousness. "Don't leave me again." The voice weighed heavy, begging for mercy, an imploration from the child who had reached for salvation and was perhaps still trapped. Would I choose to uncover the truth lurking behind that door, or would I be consumed by this unending night, destined to join the warden's collection? Time slowed at that precipice of decision, shadows swirling around me, and just as I reached for the handle, the grip of the darkness surged one last time, enveloping me whole, yanking me backward into the void. The echoes of my twins' laughter coalesced with the wailing of the Forsaken, merging into a crescendo that drowned out my thoughts, and my vision blurred as the weight of endless grief cascaded over me. The door splintered behind me, lights slashing into the darkness, revealing a glimpse of souls lost in the chasm of despair, and I understood then, as terror exploded within me, that I was merely the latest prisoner in this haunted abode, a reluctant participant in a cruel, unending nightmare. Then, I felt a hand close around my wrist, cold and unyielding, yanking me back, deeper into the shadows, into the clutches of my own Dodge's fate. And as I was dragged away, the last light flickered out, leaving only darkness in its wake. The darkness pressed against my body as I gagged on the taste of dread, the echo of that cold grip lingering against my skin. I felt the chill of its fingers seep through my clothes, like ice trailing along the veins of a corpse. My mind raced, trapped in the vice of my own terror, memories flaring to life like dying stars in the vast yawning void. Struggling against the spectral hand, I twisted, fighting to wrench myself free, but the hold was resolute, pale, and skeletal, an arm of lost hope intent on reclaiming what I thought I had escaped. "Let go," I screamed, my voice fracturing into the suffocating silence. My cries became entangled with the whispers that danced through the shadows, like ghosts mourning their own demise. Each struggling breath I took filled my lungs with the stench of decay, overwhelming fear crawling under my skin, making me feel more caged than free. As I succumbed to the pull of the inevitable, my heart thundered against the confines of my chest. While all around me the dreadful silence consumed the space, I could feel the gathering presence of the warden drawing near, an invisible weight growing in the atmosphere, vibrating with dread, waiting patiently to claim another soul. In an act of desperation, I lashed out, wrenching my body away with all the strength I could muster. A scream tore from my throat as I felt the grip weaken for just a fraction of a second. I turned and fled, launching myself blindly into the darkness. Clenching my teeth, I surveyed my surroundings, knowing all too well that pressing onward could lead me not to salvation, but to deeper despair. That I staggered through the cavernous maze, every step echoing, the shadows churning around me like a living entity. As I raced past twisted rafters, I could hear foul whispers flaring into deafening roars, as if the very walls of the warehouse were snarling, hungry for my fear. The laughter of my twin echoed, punctuated by the ghostly wails of the children, each note carrying a promise of torment. "Help us! Help us!" they called, their pleas slipping into a cacophony that spiraled deeper into my psyche. The persistence of that ethereal song seeped into the edges of my consciousness, beckoning me back, whispering threads of regret, so fragile they threatened to unravel the very fabric of my resolve. "Stop!" I gasped, my voice wavering. "I won't leave you." But even as the words left my mouth, I glanced back, and in the corner of my eye, I saw the flicker of movement. Shapes against shapes. Shadows that shouldn't exist coiling and weaving, revealing silhouettes adorned with anguish, faces distorted by betrayal. Their hollow eyes seemed aimed at me, their despair merging into palpable hunger. I felt their call press down on me, summoning memories I'd buried so deep, twisting guilt into something grotesque, something monstrous. Panic surged hot in my veins, and my instincts screamed for me to flee toward that door bathed in luminescent hope. I needed to escape the collapse of my thoughts, the specters celebrating my slipping grip on reality. But as I darted toward the faint glimmer, the atmosphere thickened. A wall of sorrow crashed around me, clawing at my psyche. Then abruptly, the children's voices crescendoed, morphing into one piercing scream that shuddered the very bones of the warehouse, as if the building itself were protesting my flight. "Come back! Don't leave us!" Their cries reverberated in my mind, colliding with the facade of my resolve. I stumbled in hesitation, stricken by the tears in their pleading eyes, knowing that no matter how far I ran, I dragged their anguish along, a heavy cloak of shared suffering. "No!" I cried, thrusting my hands to my ears, forcing myself to block out the sound. I barreled ahead, hurtling toward the door, but just as I reached for the handle, the ground suddenly quaked beneath me. A violent rumbling erupted, and a fissure opened like a maw of insatiable darkness directly before me. That I let out a choked cry as I staggered back, heart pounding as the void within the abyss flickered, revealing grotesque forms within, figures writhing, mouths wide in silent shock. I felt their despair clawing at my legs, dragging me toward the gaping maw that surged with ancient hunger. "No! I won't go!" The words choked in my throat as shadows surged forward, tendrils of darkness wrapping around my ankles, pulling me down, down, down. Beyond the door's threshold, the remnants of light flickered erratically like dying fireflies, leaving hopes and dreams hanging by a fragile thread. What awaited on the other side was uncertain, but it was a choice I had to make, a final escape plan for a soul on the brink of utter surrender. "You don't know what lies ahead." The voice of my twin slipped through the chasm, sultry and sinister, a promise steeped in malevolence. "You have to let them go, forsake everything including yourself." And just like that, the choice lay bare before me. As I stood teetering at the edge of that catastrophic maw, the child's voice ignited anew, drowning out the pleas of lost souls. "Please, don't leave me again." In that moment, amid the churning darkness, I saw my reflection, a fractured shadow within the black swirling depths, contorted and miserable. A flash ignited in my chest, breathing life into a flicker of strength. I could either keep running or unravel the terrible truth that bound us, the warden's cruel tapestry, weaving fear and grief alike. My throat twisted with the weight of the decision, but before I could grasp the handle, the world shattered into silence. Then that silence ruptured as a scream erupted from the abyss, its sound turning the very air to ice, and my heart plunged into the pit of despair, a realization striking harder than any fear. The darkness was not alone. Someone was awakening beneath my feet, clawing its way up, preparing to join the nightmares. Time itself seemed to halt, and I turned to face the abyss, realizing with horror that whatever emerged would not be my salvation but a reckoning that would change everything. The ground continued to tremble, and I could feel the ancient malice boiling from the depths beneath me. Each tremor sent shivers dancing along my spine, gnawing at the edges of my resolve. I wanted to turn back, to escape, but the children's cries lingered, haunting echoes that demanded I confront the nightmares I had long refused to acknowledge. In that moment of hesitation, a shadow slithered out, defying the very fabric of darkness. It emerged from the fissure, solidifying into a form more grotesque than I could have imagined. A figure, draped in tattered shrouds that whispered secrets of despair, lifted its elongated head, revealing sunken eyes that glowed with malice, two pools of darkness reflecting an insatiable hunger. "The warden, you've come home," it hissed, a voice dripping with mockery. The sound echoed around the warehouse like an incantation, wrapping itself around my thoughts, threatening to ensnare my sanity. "You always return, my child." A shiver coursed through minute recognition, but a deep, primal fear. My heart raced, pounding thick and fast in my ears. I wanted to scream, but the terror crushed my voice, leaving only a falter on my lips. "Leave them alone," I shouted, desperate to break the hold of despair pressing down. "They are bound to you, just as you are bound to me," the warden crooned, curling its fingers as motes of unholy light flickered across its skeletal hands. "You cannot escape your legacy. Together, we shall plunge into the darkness." The last words lingered in the air, and with every syllable, the figures in the abyss writhed more violently, their mouths now agape in sounds of horrified outrage. I took a tentative step back, instinct screaming that whatever it was about to become would mean suffering greater than I had known. Gritting my teeth, I turned back to the door, my fingers trembling as I reached desperately for the handle that dangled like a promise of liberation. Then a chorus of anguished screams erupted from the abyss, drowning every thought and taunting every hope. The children's faces appeared within the swirling shadows, their wide eyes begging, their frail bodies shattered into fractals of light and despair. "Don't leave us, please," they wailed, their voices melding into a heart-wrenching symphony of despair. But as I finally grasped the door, a hand gripped my wrist, its touch cold and clammy. It was the warden, forcing me to face the darker truths of my existence. I twisted, recoiling as my veins burned with an icy grip, and memories flooded in visions of laughter and play, of whispered promises tangled with the heart-wrenching sound of betrayal. "Let go," I cried again, my voice cracking under the weight of 1,000 sorrows. "Why would you abandon family?" The warden hissed, its body writhing, revealing a collage of torment, a nightmarish tapestry woven from the threads of lost souls. "You are as much a part of this hell as they are. You can't run from what you are." The chill clawed deeper, freezing my very essence as sudden temptation crept in, curling along the depths of my mind. Perhaps the children didn't deserve my help. Perhaps they were the burden weighing me down, the roots of dread anchoring me in this hellish existence. "No," I gasped, wrestling with the abhorrent thoughts that battled for dominance. But the air quivered with the warden's dark laughter, mocking me. In that moment of paralyzed realization, the ground shuddered violently, and the chasm widened, threatening to swallow everything above it, claiming remaining fragments of light, while the warden's laughter poured over me like cold rain. "Choose," it whispered. "Choose to forsake all, or embrace what you truly are." Torrents of conflicting feelings surged inside me, raging like wild beasts, desperate to tear free. The warden's figure loomed over the gaping maw, a sentinel draped in sorrow, whispering dark promises that curled around my mind. And then I saw the shadows moving in the depths, felt the presence of something else awakening beneath it all, something far more sinister, far more powerful. Suddenly, the children's voices twisted into something horrible and grotesque. "Please don't go," they echoed, but then I heard another voice, one that sent ice through my heart. "Join us, be free." It was the voice of my twin, taunting and sweet, entwined with the warden's malevolence. As the shadows surged higher, merging into a swirling vortex of despair and hurt, that whisper wrapped around my soul like a noose, binding me to the great unknown. I could feel myself slipping, losing grip on the remnants of who I was, teetering on the precipice of a chilling abyss. And then, just as the darkness began to drag me down, a horrifying realization struck me. I wasn't just facing the warden or the children, I was about to discover the truth that had haunted me all along. As the final echoes of the children's pleas faded, I felt my body give way, sucked into the maw of endless night, and with my last thought, the terrifying truth dawned. I was not the only one searching for salvation here, not the only soul entwined in this tragic story waiting to unfold. A figure surged from the depths of face, familiar yet twisted in agony, eyes glinting with a madness that sent a shiver straight to my core. I knew then that my struggles had only just begun, and I was not the enemy's only prey. "Welcome back, sister," echoed the voice from the darkness, final and chilling, as I plunged into a hell that felt all too familiar. The shadows closed around me like a noose, tightening, suffocating. I felt myself slipping into the void, an ocean of despair swallowing me whole. Panic clawed at my throat as the darkness pressed in, whispering my worst fears, and I realized with horror that I was drowning not just in emptiness, but in a past I thought I had left behind. Suddenly, a light flickered at the edge of my consciousness, not the cold fluorescent hum of the warehouse, but a warmth that radiated through the depths of despair. It felt like a memory, a glimmer of a time before all of this, before betrayal and darkness had altered my very essence. "You can still choose," a soft voice urged. It was a child's voice, one I recognized. "No," I gasped, yanking my attention back to the horrifying visage before me. The warden stood there, a twisted smirk curling its lips, eyes swirling like black holes. "You think you can escape this? You have drawn the line, little vessel. You belong to us now." The echoes of the children erupted once more, but this time I didn't let them drown me. I listened carefully. They were trapped, much like me, but they had something I did note, a kind of clarity within their terror. "Free us, and you will find your peace," they pleaded. "Foolish girl," the warden snarled, stepping closer, its elongated fingers brushing against my skin like knives. "They will consume you. They want you to sacrifice yourself for their lost lives. You are not their savior." With every syllable, its voice reverberated through the cold air, igniting the shadows around me, sending them swirling into frenzied chaos. I was torn, grappling with the truth I had summoned. In this nightmare, sacrifice was the only currency of freedom. But freedom wasn't what I sought, it was redemption. "I won't be your vessel," I hissed defiantly, but my thoughts faltered as I felt my twin's presence creeping back in. "Welcome back, sister," she purred, seduction dripping from her words like honey. Her voice was all too familiar, sparkling with the emptiness I had tried to forget. I realized too late that I had been drawn into a darkness far deeper than the warden's grasp, the darkness of my own making. She was the echo of all my unresolved grief, a reflection of the pain I had buried alive. In that moment of clarity, I grasped the shards of memory I had clung to, the laughter and light of innocence lost, and I took a step back from the edge, withdrawing from the abyss that sought to consume me. "I will not forsake them," I screamed, heart pounding as I felt the ground tremble beneath me. "They deserve more than my darkness." The warden reeled back, anger flaring behind its molten eyes. "You think your strength can shield you from what you have done? That they would simply forgive? You are theirs just as they are yours. You cannot escape the truth." I closed my eyes, drowning out the rude chorus battling for my consciousness. "No more," I yelled, a surge of courage flooding through me. "No more lies." In that moment, the shadows shook violently, swirling faster, rising like a hurricane of despair. I opened my eyes wide, firm against the onslaught, letting my memories spill forth like a torrent. Each shard of light glowed brighter, rebelling against the world the warden tried to weave. The voices of my childhood flickered to life, the warmth of laughter, the innocence that had once defined me, rekindling the flicker of hope deep within. "We are not lost," I shouted, summoning all my willpower. "We are not just vessels for despair," and with my voice, I felt the ground beneath me crack, the warden's grip faltering for the first time. As the overwhelming force of the warden began to rise, I turned toward the flickering light. The door was still there, beckoning me. "Together," I cried, reaching for the children's voices within me, their laughter weaving through the strands of fate. The shadows hesitated, frozen between the power of fear and the promise of something greater. The dark laughter that had once reverberated now fractured into crumbling echoes, as I held out my hands to the children surrounding me. We are bound in this. Together, and together we will rise. In that heartbeat of defiance, I thrust my hands forward, and light erupted like a supernova, engulfing the room in its searing embrace. It illuminated every shadow, disintegrating the tendrils that tugged at my limbs, and revealed the truth: the myriad faces of desperate souls no longer ensnared in the warden's web, drawn to the radiance of our united hopes. What? The warden roared, its features twisting in panic as it recoiled from the light. In that moment, I felt free, that connection diminishing, leaving behind a void that had once consumed my every thought. The echoes of laughter surged around me, lifting me higher and higher, transcending even the warden's malevolence. And then, I understood the chilling truth: it was the warden itself that was diminished, not the children. It was my twin who cackled, enveloped in darkness, a haunting remnant lurking within my mind. "You are mine," she screamed, but I was free now. I breached the threshold, the light slicing through the layers of sorrow, threading it all together, shattering the prison of despair I had carried for too long. Not anymore. I bellowed, plunging through the door, tumbling into the divine, blinding light that would finally lead to salvation. As I spun away from the terror, something tugged at my consciousness, a siren call from the shadows, the icy grip of a final promise. "You can't leave, you cannot forsake your true sibling." But the last echoes of that whisper faded as I broke free, collapsing deeply into the embrace of light. And yet, I could still feel the subtle caress of a chilling presence looming in the recesses of my mind, waiting, watching, the hunger far from quelled. In the silence that followed, a shadow leered back from the edges of my consciousness, filling the space like dreadful smoke, whispering, "You will always return to your true home." And that darkness curled back into the corners, echoing with wicked laughter, ensuring that while I had escaped the clutches of the warden, my struggle had only just begun. In that unsettling realization, I felt the last fragment of my heart contract with dread. Freedom wouldn't come easily. My twin was out there, lurking beyond the veil of light, and the horror, far from over, promised to return. "Welcome home," it whispered, and I shuddered as I faced the fragility of my own freedom, knowing that the battle had only started.